We're going to talk about the churches of Romanesque Burgundy in France. We're going to talk about the churches of St. Peter and Paul at Cluny, usually just known as Saint-Pierre or St. Peter. The church of Saint-Lazare or St. Lazarus at Autun, and the church of Mary Magdalene, Santa Madeleine in Vézelay. First, we will talk about the monastery at. Although the church was torn down, and we do not have the tympana, we are able to do some reconstructions of it, and there are fragments of sculpture which have survived. So I'll be showing you some of those. The artist, the sculptor, we don't know his name. We can call him the Cluny master, and he seems to have been very influential. Some of works that seem to be by his hand are also found at Vézelay in the nave capitals. Not the tympana there, but the capitals. And one of the assistants, at least we assume he was an assistant, one of the hands, as we say, when we see a particular artist style, we'll say it's the hand of the artist. We're saying it's by that artist. So we see the hand of an artist, which we later see at another church at Autun. And in that case, the sculptor has actually recorded his name. He carved it into the tympana. And so we know that his name is Giselbertus. So he was probably first an assistant to the master at Cluny. As you look at this reconstruction, you can see that what we have is a Christ in the center, the kind of iconography that we call Christ in glory, the apocalyptic Christ, or the majesty of the Lord, or Christ in majesty, all pretty much referring to the same thing, Christ in heaven. He's seated on in the middle of a large oval halo that completely surrounds his entire body. We know that it's Christ because he has a nimmed halo, or a halo with a cross in it. And you've already seen images of this with him holding the book, blessing with the other hand. We think there was an apse painting in the conch of the apse that was very similar to this, with the majesty of the Lord there as well. On either side, we have angels who are on clouds, and up in what, can we call it corners when it doesn't have corners? We have the four evangelist symbols, the eagle, the angel or winged man, the ox, and the lion. We think that the tympana at a smaller abbey, the abbey at Charlus, was probably based on the tympana at Cluny, but it is certainly much simplified. You've just got Christ and the two angels, and then of course you have apostles down there below in the lintel. One of the largest surviving fragments is found in the Rhode Island School of Design Museum of Art, and this is really a wonderful piece. This is St. Peter. He probably was in the spandrels, or the sort of the corners that are above the lunette. And let's take a look at his style. We have a figure which has really a lot of interest to it. He's got this wonderfully detailed beard and hair that's formed by grooves, just sort of carving ridges into the, or carving grooves that leave ridges into the stone. Little curly cues, as you can see at the end of his hair. Very giant, huge key, and that's to identify him. We'll know he is St. Peter because he is carrying the keys. Peter is supposed to have been given the keys of the kingdom of heaven by Christ. And they're made extra large so you can see them when he's up there in the spandrels and you're down there on the ground looking up. Remember also, all of these churches were painted. So the sculpture was painted, probably with pretty bright colors, so you could really pick out details. I think it's really interesting to look at the way the draperies are carved. And he uses a really interesting technique. It almost looks like an armadillo, or plates that overlap. If you look at the area over the chest, and then sort of reversed over the arm. And then, of course, there are details like these little circles that are carved to be decoration around the collar. And we'll see some techniques like this in other Burgundian Romanesque sculpture. Just quickly, there are a number of capitals that survive. I don't think I'm going to list them all. I've got a list of them in the notes that I've put up there. But these are some that I just had found pictures of. One is narrative. It may be the sacrifice of Isaac, Abraham being almost completely broken off. Looks like Isaac looks more like he's seated on a little chair than on an altar, but presumably that's what's going on. He doesn't look very upset about what's happening. And then there's the angel coming in, of course, to stop the sacrifice. So at least that's how that has been interpreted. The figure over here, sort of reminds you, in a sense, of the Roman river gods. You've got a personification, although there's no great interest or understanding of anatomy. And you have this river flowing down, and foliage carved, growing up. Very abstracted, very pattern-like, and really, I guess, extremely charming. Don't try to apply Renaissance classical standards to Romanesque sculpture. You'll just get in trouble. Just don't do that. Look at it for what it is and enjoy. There are some questions about what these things represent, and this is usually considered to be a river of paradise, but there's probably other ways that people have interpreted. A number of, there are some that seem to be virtues. We see presumably the personification of a virtue over there, the little lady with the draperies that seem to flutter at the hem. And also, there's a number that seem to refer to music, and they have been considered to be the tones of the plain song, the Gregorian chant, although I think that's kind of interesting because they're all the figures that we associate with music are showing musical instruments, and you can see one of the figures here. And of course, plain song is music without accompaniment. It doesn't have musical instruments. So I'm not quite sure what to make out of that. Maybe it's just, how would you show music except by showing musical instruments? And just to do that, just to show music. Remember how important music for Cluny. Just to show music is innovative. So here we see some of the figures. There's supposed to be musical tones on the capitals of the columns. They're not sure where all these capitals were. They're not sure if they were all in the same place, if some were in the nave, if some were around the apse. And there are a number of reconstructions about that. They're very energetic little figures. They've usually got fairly large hands and can gesture. They twist, so you get really a wonderful feeling of movement. The draperies sometimes move away from the body. And they all seem to be in these mandorlas with inscriptions on them. One of the problems is that it's possible to remove the sculpture, and so they don't know if some of them have been switched, and they're certainly missing capitals. So reconstructing it is one of those weighty problems that I'm not undertaking.